Playing in a band can be like being married and running a business with multiple people all at once. As a result, even successful bands often dissolve into glorified solo projects as time in the industry take their toll. With 2 spots in the list of the top 10 best-selling albums of all time, Eagles are objectively one of the most popular American bands in history. Before long, they would prove pivotal in the West Coast country rock scene that would help define the 1970s. The whole project began as the backing band for Linda Ronstadt. From the LA scene, the singer handpicked drummer Don Henley and guitarist Glenn Frey. The pair hit it off so well musically that they endeavored to form their own band. Ronstadt recommended they hire second guitarist Bernie Leadon, and her producer thought Randy Meisner would be a good fit on bass guitar. Longtime member Don Felder joined in 1974, while Joe Walsh arrived in 1975 to replace Leadon. According to Far Out, tensions with Leadon had escalated to the point that he left the group not long after pouring a beer on Frey during a band meeting. Timothy B. Schmidt came in the late 1970s after Meisner left due to medical problems and creative differences with other Eagles. Schmidt played bass on the 1979 album The Long Run, and not long after, the band then went on a hiatus. The break seemed permanent until its 1994 Hell Freezes Over reunion album surfaced. Since then, Frey participated in every 2000s Eagles project until his death in 2016. In the 2020s, the band included former country superstar Vince Gill along with Schmidt and Walsh. Henley remains the sole original member. Before they would become a definitive act of the 1980s, the goth keyboard-driven rock band The Cure began life in the mid-1970s as a tight, sharp, and crisp post-punk outfit originally called Malice, and then The Easy Cure. Robert Smith took lead vocals and guitar, recruiting friends from school Michael Dempsey and Lowell Tolhurst to play bass and drums respectively. They ultimately brought on established guitarist Pearl Thompson, and by 1978, The Easy Cure had changed its name to simply The Cure. The group lost Thompson by the time it signed to Fiction Records and began recording its first album, Three Imaginary Boys. Dempsey subsequently departed just after the release of the record, and Smith brought in new members, Simon Gallup and Matthew Hartley, to record 17 Seconds, The Cure's first stab at darker territory. New members, and Thompson, would cycle in and out over the years, and Tolhurst moved from the drums to the keyboards. Tolhurst ultimately left in 1989 when his substance abuse overtook his ability to contribute. While he would find sobriety and return to The Cure for some guest appearances, his official departure meant that Smith was the only original member of the band remaining. Before they were Journey, they were the Golden Gate Rhythm section, populated by former Santana members Neil Schon and Greg Raleigh on guitar and keyboards. They ultimately brought in bassist Ross Valerie and guitarist George Tickner of Frumious Bandersnatch, along with drummer Prairie Prince of the Tubes. Initially a backup band for hire, the group renamed itself Journey, replaced Prince with Ainsley Dunbar, and became a jazz progressive rock fusion outfit. By the early 1980s, the lineup had solidified with the addition of powerhouse vocalist Steve Perry and keyboard player Jonathan Cain. The pair helped Journey become a best-selling pop rock band responsible for fist-pumping anthems like Don't Stop Believin' and Separate Ways, and power ballads such as Faithfully and Open Arms. Steve Perry left Journey in 1987, and the band didn't reconvene until the mid-90s.
The feeling just got very clear to me that I need to just stop.
Unfortunately, Perry's involvement wouldn't last beyond the 1996 album Trial by Fire because a hip injury prevented him from further touring. By 2007, the group's longest-serving members were Sean, Cain, and Valerie. Cain and Sean fired Valerie in 2020 for allegedly trying to acquire the rights to the Journey name, making Sean the last musician from the band's first iteration. Foghat was started in 1970 by former members of Savoy Brown. Singer Lonesome Dave Peverett, drummer Roger Earl, and bassist Tony Stevens joined up with guitarist Rod Price to form the British blues and hard rock band, and they became a major act of the arena rock era. Foghat didn't generate all that many hits, but nearly all of them became foundational to classic rock radio. Among the band's contributions were Slow Ride, Fool for the City, Stone Blue, and a cover of the standard I Just Want to Make Love to You. The band attempted to weather Price's exit in 1980, but split up after recording the 1983 flop Zigzag Walk with new guitarist Eric Cartwright. It didn't help that Peverett didn't want to perform anymore either. Foghat's first lineup did reunite for an album and some tours in the 1990s, but that era would end when Peverett died of complications from cancer in 2000. The band moved on with new singer Charlie Hune until 2005, when 57-year-old Price died and Stevens quit. Foghat remains a touring act and came out with its 17th studio album Sonic Mojo in 2023. The only musician left from the early 1970s who's still with the band is drummer Roger Earl.
I've been there since the beginning.
After a series of personal tragedies and musical projects in the 1980s, singer-songwriter and guitarist Art Alexakis moved to Portland, met bassist Craig Montoya and drummer Scott Cuthbert, and recorded the independently released 1993 LP World of Noise. Before recording and releasing album number 2, 1995's Sparkle and Fade, which included huge alternative rock radio hits Heroin Girl and Santa Monica, Alex Sockis had cut Cuthbert and brought in Greg Eklund on drums. As that trio, Everclear continued to churn out catchy rock hits for the remainder of the 1990s and beyond. In 2003, both Montoya and Eklund departed the band, tiring of Alex Sockis' alleged tendency to treat Everclear as a personal musical outlet and make most of its creative decisions. As Eklund explained in a Reddit AMA in 2018, Everclear is Everclear. It was always Art's band, his songs. You would have to ask the guys who play with him now whether or not they are in the band or hired guns. I know a lot of the guys who have played in the band after Craig and I left. Eventually, they all leave for the same reasons as Craig and I did. The German hard rock band, best known for definitively 1980s hits like No One Like You and Rock You Like a Hurricane, had been around for a long time before they ever caught on outside of their home nation. Metal Storm reports that Scorpions first came together back in 1965 as a trio, with guitarist and lead vocalist Rudolf Schenker, bassist Lothar Heimberg, and drummer Wolfgang Joni. By the time they released their 1982 commercial breakthrough album Blackout, Heimberg and Joni had long since departed, but new members had arrived. Deciding to focus on guitar and leading the band, Schenker brought in lead singer Klaus Meine, as well as bassist Francis Buchholz, drummer Herman Rarebell, and guitarist Matthias Jobs. By the 2020s, Meine and Jobs were still with Scorpions and boasting over 40-year tenures, but neither had played with the group for as long as Schenker, who still heads up Scorpions after roughly 6 decades. In 1984, 4 Pennsylvania teenagers formed Live. The band's cryptic, agitated, and emotional alternative rock captured a feeling in the mid-1990s, as hit singles like I Alone, Selling the Drama, Lightning Crashes, and All Over You were all over the radio.
We learned how to do it together, and all the ideas come from all 4 of us, at any different time, so there's no rules.
Their albums sold less and less in the 2000s, and frontman Ed Kowalczyk attempted to take over all creative decisions in the band. He ultimately called for a split over email. As guitarist Chad Taylor recalled to Rolling Stone, "We all responded in about 30 seconds and went, 'Great idea.' Tensions eased enough for a 2016 reunion tour, with Kowalczyk and Taylor quietly negotiating with promoters to receive 40% and 30% revenue shares, respectively. Bassist Patrick Dahlheimer and drummer Chad Gracie got 15% each, and Live stayed on the road until the pandemic forced them to stop in 2020. In 2022, Kowalczyk declared that he'd acquired a controlling interest in Live and had fired Taylor. Supposedly, this move was meant to punish the guitarist for bringing his business partner Bill Hines into the band's orbit. According to Rolling Stone, it was discovered that Hines had allegedly swindled the members of Live out of $10 million. Then Kowalczyk fired Dahlheimer and Gracie and revived Live with backing musicians to tour casinos, festivals, and amusement parks. The Minneapolis indie rock scene of the early 1980s produced some legendary acts, including The Replacements, Husker Du, and Soul Asylum. The first 2 quickly gained national recognition, but it would take Soul Asylum more than a decade after its founding to find mainstream fame. The 1992 album Grave Dancers Union landed the group a #1 alternative rock hit in Somebody to Shove. Not long after, the 1993 single and video for Runaway Train made Soul Asylum one of the best-known rock bands on the planet. Hits like Misery and Just Like Anyone followed in short order, and everyone was listening.
They made that wonderful song about runaway children, which had a big impact on young people throughout the country.
The first Soul Asylum lineup to record included Dave Pirner on guitars and vocals, Dan Murphy on guitar, Carl Mueller on bass, and Pat Morley on drums. Grant Young replaced Morley after a couple of releases, but he would also be the first long-tenured Soul Asylum member to leave. According to Spin, he couldn't get the rhythms right during the Grave Dancers Union sessions, and his substitute Sterling Campbell replaced him full-time around 1994. Campbell left 4 years later, while Mueller died of complications from cancer in 2005. For his part, Murphy quit in 2012. In a statement on Soul Asylum's website, the guitarist wrote, "To survive in the game of music in this current incarnation, it occurs to me that one needs an unhealthy and combustive internal combination of 2 seemingly distant attributes, naivety and swagger. I no longer have either." Pirner continues to tour and record under the Soul Asylum name, albeit with new musicians backing him up. ACDC came together in 1973, formed by Australian guitarist brothers Malcolm and Angus Young.
When I was young and he said, me and you were going to play together, I said, "You're kidding."
Things rounded out with the addition of drummer Phil Rudd, bassist Mark Evans, and lead singer Dave Evans. However, after not wanting to perform an early gig, Dave was replaced by the band's driver Bon Scott, a vocalist who'd been in a few regionally popular progressive rock bands. The band released several successful albums with this lineup, eventually replacing Mark Evans with Cliff Williams. By 1979, the band had achieved world renown thanks to their successful albums Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, Let There Be Rock, and Highway to Hell. However, the future of the band was left in doubt after Bon Scott died of alcohol poisoning in February 1980. But with new singer Brian Johnson, AC/DC recorded Back in Black, which would go on to move 27 million copies in the US alone. Creative tensions with Malcolm Young led to Rudd's departure in 1983, although he'd return in 1994. Sadly, Malcolm's dementia diagnosis in 2014 prevented him from recording anymore, and he died in 2017. Rudd again left the band a few years earlier due to legal issues related to drug possession charges and allegedly attempting to arrange a murder, though he has performed with the band on and off since. This left Angus Young, the last original member of AC/DC, still in the group. As of 2024, the band includes Young, his nephew Stevie, Johnson, and later additions Chris Chaney and Matt Logg. Foreigner got its name because British musicians Ian MacDonald and Mick Jones created the band in 1976 in New York with American singer Lou Gramm. About a year later, the band became one of the biggest rock outfits on the planet, with its self-titled debut selling 5 million copies and leading to its first big hits like Cold as Ice and Feels Like the First Time. After filling arenas in the late 1970s, Jones fired MacDonald in 1980. Foreigner then went pop in the 80s with the power ballads Waiting for a Girl Like You and I Want to Know What Love Is. Gramm quit Foreigner in 1990 for a moderately successful solo career. He returned a few years later, but he resigned once more in 2003. Since about that time, Kelly Hansen has served as the main singer in Foreigner. He plays alongside bassist Jeff Pilson, who joined in 2004, and an assortment of side musicians. As of the 2020s, Jones was still officially a member of the group who would head out on stage for a few songs with the band when his health allowed. In 2024, he announced that he had Parkinson's disease, but that he would participate in the band's final tour in some way. After grunge legends Nirvana packed it in following the 1994 death of Kurt Cobain, the British band Bush arrived to fill a musical void. Over the next few years, Bush dominated alternative rock radio and MTV with growlers like Everything Zen, Little Things, Glycerine, Swallowed, and Greedy Fly. With great success came changes in the Bush lineup, which had been the same since it formed in 1992. After attempting to leave in 2001 to be with his wife during a medically difficult pregnancy, founding guitarist Nigel Pulsford was fired over email by frontman Gavin Rossdale in 2002. Bush broke up later that year, only to reunite in 2010. However, Pulsford and bassist Dave Parsons declined to participate. As Rossdale told Spin, Pulsford simply didn't want to do it, while Parsons said he was unavailable. Bush's old drummer Robin Goodrich came back and stayed in the fold until 2019, when Blabbermouth reports Rossdale fired him unexpectedly. The drummer later sued over unpaid tour profits. As of 2022 and the recording of the album The Art of Survival, Rossdale is the only early member of Bush still in the group.